Good afternoon, everyone. We will be starting our presentation in a couple minutes as we still have some folks logging on. In the meantime, I have a question for everybody who is already logged on. I have one very important question for you, and I can tell you there's only one correct answer. Does pineapple belong on pizza? Hit your question mark icon and let us know if pineapple belongs on pizza. And keep in mind, there's only one right answer. Paul, Pamela, William, Wesley, whoop, wrong answer, Travis. Bob, no, Jessica, wrong answer. Dylan, Alan, Pam Carter, Katie. I tell you what, you guys have, this is the best audience ever. You guys are getting the right answer. Clearly, pineapple does not belong on pizza. But Misty, I do agree with bacon. I think that would be pretty good. I'll leave throw it out. Andrea, yep, I'm right with you. All right, we are at 1 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Ohio EPA's In Your Community webinar titled Resources for Lead Service Line Identification and Replacement. Our In Your Community webinar series focuses on environmental issues at the local level, covering a wide range of topics from how Ohio EPA regulates pollution sources to ways on improving the environment in your local area or community. My name is Dan Sowery with the Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance here at Ohio EPA, and I will be moderating this afternoon's presentation with Ohio EPA's Amy Klei, Jon Bernstein, Katie Courtright, and Nush Courlas. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items to help you participate and engage with our presenters. On this slide, you'll see an example screenshot of your attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your computer desktop on the right-hand side of your screen. For this presentation, you are listening in using your computer audio. If you're having sound issues or if the slides stop advancing, please try refreshing your browser. If that doesn't work, try logging off and logging back in. And if you continue to have issues, please let us know in the Q&A pane, and one of our behind-the-scenes team members will assist you. Please feel free to submit questions to the presenters by clicking on the question mark icon and typing them into the questions pane on your attendee interface. And you may send questions in at any time during the presentation. We will try our best to answer questions as they come in and during the Q&A portion. If we don't answer your question during the Q&A, we will reach out to you via email following today's webinar. You can also click on the document icon on your attendee interface to view included handouts. One of those handouts includes a PDF file of the PowerPoint slides used for today's presentation. Nicholas, you are exactly right. Pineapple does not belong on pizza. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording and a follow-up email along with a survey. The survey will also appear once this webinar ends. We value your feedback, and we would greatly appreciate it if you would let us know how we are doing and let us know if there's anything that we can do to further assist you. A certificate of attendance will also be emailed to you after the session. And with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Amy Klei.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amy Klei, and I'm the Chief of the Division of Drinking and Groundwaters. We are thrilled to have so many folks on to the line today to talk about this really important issue. We have been, and it's a massive issue to address, not just in the country, but here in the state of Ohio. where we know we have a lot of lead service lines and a lot of work to do. We have been collectively, the agency, along with our water system partners, watching and responding to the changing regulatory landscape with US EPA as they work through the federal lead and copper rule revisions and the federal lead and copper rule improvements that are underway. What is going to come out of that is certainly going to have a big impact on not only our program here at the agency, but all of our water utilities and communities that are having to meet those requirements. So the success for us in Ohio really starts with identifying and replacing these lead service lines. And we have been working on multiple fronts to understand what are the greatest needs across the state to get this done, and working with our water system stakeholders in a lot of different ways. We know that water systems across the state are in different places in terms of readiness to address this scale of the problem and technical capabilities. So in looking at the multiple fronts and considering what technical assistance, what type of funding, we've also pulled in a third-party contractor to help us look at this holistically for addressing lead service lines across the state and identifying what types of initiatives and actions are needed. We'll be sitting down with Governor DeWine's office and working very closely with our director here, Ann Vogel, on setting our statewide strategy. And I know some of you on this call have already had input in this, but we're very interested in hearing what you need. Challenges with using these existing funds, what's needed for future funding, and implementation barriers for these projects. So, as I said earlier, I'm really excited about this presentation today and the upcoming regional in-person sessions. Looking forward to seeing a lot of people personally on site. And you've got the right people on this call today to help answer your questions. So thank you for your time and partnership. And at this point, I'm going to hand the mic over to Jon Bernstein, who is the Chief of the Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance. Take it away, Jon.
Great. Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Dan, and thank you, everybody, for being on the call today. We think this is a really good time to engage with you. I think this is a generational opportunity with the amount of funding and technical assistance that's going to be available through Ohio EPA to assist you in not only identifying, inventorying, and mapping your lead service lines, but also replacing them. So just to get us kicked off, we're going to do a quick poll. I'd like to see where you're at. So if you could let me know, what is your affiliation? Are you a local government official? Could be a council member, commissioner, administrator, or utilities director. Are you representing a public water system? Are you a consultant, technical assistance provider, or other? And you can choose all that apply.
Okay, everyone, I have launched the poll. So when this shows up on your screen, please select all that apply, and I'll give folks a few moments to do so. Okay, we're about 80% of the votes in. I'll give it a few more seconds here for anybody that has missed it. Again, select all that apply. All right, I'm going to close the poll and share the results. Back to you, Jon.
All right, thanks, Dan. And it looks like we have a pretty good spread here, and that's really good because this issue is not just affecting public water systems, but really everybody in the state of Ohio. It's going to be a real team effort to kind of take care of this monumental problem that we're dealing with lead service lines. Okay, so where is all this assistance coming from? If you've tuned in before, you're probably familiar with the state revolving fund programs, but if not, I'll give you just a brief primer on these two programs. So every state in Puerto Rico has state revolving fund programs. In Ohio, we have two, one for wastewater, also called the Clean Water State Revolving Fund Program, or the Water Pollution Control Fund. And then for drinking water, it's the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. In Ohio, that's the Water Supply Revolving Loan Account. How these programs work and have worked for a very long time, we receive federal capitalization grants from US EPA. In turn, we loan those dollars out and repayments come in with interest from our borrowers for a wide variety of infrastructure projects. Over time, we've also had the ability to offer some of our capitalization grant from US EPA as what we call principal forgiveness, or basically grant dollars. They're loans that don't need to be repaid. With the most recent Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act in 2021, also called the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, we have received a tremendous amount of supplemental grant funding from US EPA, especially for lead. What we are using that for is both low interest loans, 0%, and principal forgiveness for lead service line removal, in addition to providing technical assistance for identifying and mapping those lead lines. So what is a lead service line? There's lots of issues with old infrastructure in Ohio and across the country, but we're really talking about that portion of lead line between your main, the water main there on the left side in blue, and the meter at the house. Oftentimes, the focus has been on replacement of the public side, but Nush will talk to you really about some of the regulatory drivers that are coming that are going to require full replacement. So we really want you to replace both the public side on the public right-of-way, as well as the piece of lead service line up to the house. It's a big problem, and unfortunately, we cannot address lead joints in the water main. This funding that we're talking about is really specific to the lead service lines. And I've heard estimates that Ohio is #2 in the nation, but we've got a pretty good leg up with some of the financial assistance and technical assistance we've got out there so far. So this money that we have coming in, we are in year 2 of our Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act funding for the state of Ohio. In year 1, if you look at the first green box towards the top right, we received $71 million in capitalization grants from US EPA. That's bumping up a pretty good factor, over double in year 2 to $166 million in funding from US EPA. Half of this money, 49% to be precise, has to go out as principal forgiveness. So what you see and what Katie will talk about when you're ready for replacement for disadvantaged communities that meet some of our socioeconomic benchmarks, we're going to be able to cover about 49% of your costs as principal forgiveness. So a lot of money for replacement, but also a lot of money for technical services. So looking ahead to this year, to 2024, the state's going to have about $19.4 million for technical assistance and local assistance. Some of this is going through some of our existing service providers like RCAP, one of our great partners. I think we've got a handful of RCAP people online today, are helping communities individually address, identify, map, inventory the lead service lines. The state of Ohio is also looking to develop a request for proposals to have a state contract, to have a handful of contractors available to do a variety of services. They may be out in the field doing GIS services for you. They might be out there potholing and identifying where the lead lines are. They may be helping you put an inventory together, but we're going to be putting a tremendous amount of effort and dollars out of our capitalization grants from US EPA to help you identify where the lead lines are. As far as funding available for replacement, about $200 million is going to be available this year for repair and replacement of lead service lines. Some of that's carryover from year 1, that's $71 million I showed on the previous slide, and a lot of that's coming from our $166 million from this year's capitalization grant. We really anticipate this funding to last probably about 7 years. So we started last year, but there is going to be some carryover. So we're looking probably to 2027, 2028 to continue funding these projects. So the sooner you start mapping and inventorying, the sooner you're going to be in compliance with some of the regulations coming down the pike, and you'll be able to take advantage of this tremendous opportunity and these dollars for lead service lines. Okay, I think we're handing it over to Katie Courtright to talk more about the funding, and I'll pass it to you, Katie.
All right, everyone, this is Katie Courtright, but actually I think Nush is up next for her section on technical assistance.
Thanks, Katie. So let's go ahead and take a quick poll. So this question is about the status of your lead surface line inventory. So I'll let Dan go ahead and start the poll there.
All right, folks, I'm going to launch the poll. Make sure you select one answer. And I have launched the poll. When this shows up on your screen, I'll give you a few moments to select one answer. All right, we're about at 75% of folks have voted. I'm going to give folks a few more seconds just to get the last remaining votes in. All right, looks like we are over 80% of you have responded, so I'm going to close the poll and share the results. All right, Katie, or Nush, sorry.
That's all right. Thank you. No, I'm glad to see that majority of folks on this call are either underway or more than halfway complete, and we have actually 3% that are complete. So that's great news. I am hoping that what we talk about today will actually help others who maybe haven't started or are just getting started to continue on their inventory. So to start off, I'm just going to go briefly through some of the timeline. Amy had mentioned it. We have the lead and copper rule revision that had come out recently, December of 2021. It was effective. There are some compliance deadlines in that rule revision that is for October of next year. I'll speak to that a little bit more on the next couple slides. Right as soon as that revision came out, US EPA announced that they will be making improvements on those revisions. I believe that was based on some comments that were received on the rule revisions. So they are likely going to be looking at everything in the rule except for those inventories that we spoke about. So the inventory is still going to be due October 16th of 2024, but some of the other items that were in the rule revision, including lead service line replacements, action and trigger levels, how we handle our environmental justice and underserved communities, and also some of the compliance sampling are all up for changes in the new lead and copper rule improvements. So, excuse me, we are expecting that the draft of these improvements, rule improvements, will be coming out in the fall of this year. Might be a little bit later, so we'll keep an eye on that and be communicating that update as soon as we know. And then we will have a promulgation of those rules prior to October of 2024. So be on the lookout for that. We are watching very closely to when those rule improvements will be coming out. So as I mentioned, the service line inventory is still required. That is part of the rule revision that had come out in October or December of 2021. The inventory is due by October 16th of 2024. So we're not too far off, right? We know this is a lot of work to be done. So we are trying to put as much money and effort towards helping our communities get these done. The inventory is required for all community and non-transient and non-community public water systems. Ohio has developed a template to complete the inventory, and the systems are required to use our template. This template will allow us to, excuse me, allow us to use that data to form internal dashboards, external dashboards, report out to US EPA. So it's very important that this template be used for your inventory. One other item that I think was mentioned already before was the inventory is to document the material and a few other pieces of information for all service lines. So we're not just focused on the ones that you think are lead. We are looking at all service line materials, and we're also looking at both the public and private side of that service line. And this is what you would consider the planning piece of replacing your lead service lines. So this is a very important step to determining what your needs are, what our state's needs are, so that we can hopefully plan our funding as well as your projects as best we can. So a little bit more about the inventory. As I mentioned, it is the public side and the private side materials that you'll need to document. Once you have that initial inventory completed, there will be requirements for annual and triannual updates of that inventory, and that'll be based on your system's monitoring schedule. These will need to be publicly available, and if you do not have lead, galvanized, or any unknown service line materials, then you will need to do the initial inventory. However, the subsequent updates won't be required. So as we know, this is a big effort. Some other ways that you can identify your service lines without doing a full effort. If you have some projects that are already going on right now, for example, water main replacements, if you're doing meter replacements, any kind of repairs on the water main or disruption of service, this is the perfect time to go ahead and try and identify those service lines. Once you have that identification done, you can better plan and apply for funding. So as John mentioned, we do have some technical assistance for this identification and inventory efforts that are underway. One of them is through Ohio Rural Community Assistance Program, who has done a lot of work for us with general technical assistance, and they're also now doing a focused effort on lead service line inventory work. We are also, as John also mentioned, we are working on a state contract for some direct assistance as well. So Ohio Rural Community Assistance Program, or RCAP, is working with public water systems that are under 10,000 in population. They are helping our communities develop service line inventory. They're working on outreach to the community, and then also assistance and training in identification. If you are interested in working with RCAP and you have a public water system that has a population under 10,000, feel free to email me, or my contact information will be at the end of these slides. Feel free to contact me and I will get you in touch with RCAP. The other very big effort that we have is the state contract. So this state contract is currently with our Development of Administrative Services, and it's being drafted. The request for proposals is being drafted right now, and then it'll be advertised. We're anticipating advertising late summer to early fall with the hope of having a contract in place by the end of the year. We'll likely have to do multiple vendors because of the need in Ohio. We don't anticipate one vendor will be able to handle the amount of work that we have to get done before October of next year. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and talk about what is involved in this contract. So some of the activities that we will have in this contract include document review, on-site identification, inventory development, of course, and then in the end, you'll have to develop a replacement plan. And that plan should be part of your asset management program. So all of that kind of assistance will be done through this state contract. So the idea is once we have this contract in place, or a few contracts, we will be allowing public water systems to request assistance through this effort. We will look at those applications and prioritize them based on the type of project it is and if it meets the eligibility for the contract. And then we will direct the contractors to go out and help those public water systems to do the work that was in their project. It is no cost to the public water system. We actually have a lot of money behind this contract. We have put aside $18 million towards this. Portion of it is from last year's state revolving fund through the bipartisan infrastructure law. And this year we are putting forth $15 million from that, or $13 million from that from our current year. So we have $18 million going towards this. We're hoping that will help all of our public water systems, at least majority of them, and also with the efforts from RCAP to get their inventory going and hopefully get them completed by next October. Next, we have another quick poll. I'll go ahead and hand it off to Katie.
Thanks, Nush. Thanks, everyone, again for joining us. My name is Katie Courtright. I'm the Assistant Chief in the Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance, or DEFA. I'm going to take you through the last part of our presentation, and to start that off, we're going to take one last final poll, and it's really about your preferences and how we communicate program updates and announcements. So that's via email, webinar, social media, or newsletters, and you can choose all that apply.
Hey folks, I have launched the poll. When this shows up on your screen, go ahead and make your selections, and keep in mind that you can select more than one. And I'll give folks a few moments to do so. All right, 70 to 75% have since voted. I'm going to give it a few more seconds for any last votes coming in. All right, it looks like we're about 80%. So I am going to close the poll and share the results back with you. Back to you, Katie.
Thank you, Dan. Okay. And this is really helpful. We're going to talk about at the end of the presentation, this last section, we're going to talk about some of the ways to stay connected and engaged with us. And it's really just, to further your efforts towards lead service line replacement, we want to be available to you, and we want you to have the most up-to-date information. So we'll be talking about some ways to do that. All right. So the first part of my portion of the presentation, I'm going to talk to you about the funding options currently available through the WSRLA. That's the State Drinking Water Revolving Fund that John overviewed at the beginning of the presentation. This program is a loan program, but with the additional bill funding, we have some really attractive incentives for lead service line improvements. And we're going to sort of just jump off right where Nush left off with planning and design. So under technical assistance, you can get help with that inventory and mapping effort. And through the WSRLA program, we also offer financing options for some of this similar work. So planning and design, these are loan types that you can finance through the program. And you can use those for some of the same activities that you can, that Nush was describing under technical assistance. So if you have kind of a project in mind and you're ready to move forward with those pieces, you can come to us for financing for planning and or design for your lead service line replacement. All of our planning and design loans are 0% for 5 years. And the intention is for those to be rolled into long-term construction financing. So as you move through those phases on a particular project and you get to construction financing, we'll roll all of those previous planning and design loans into your final construction loan. And that way you're not paying on any of that upfront financing until after construction is complete. And I'll talk a little bit more about principal forgiveness there for lead service line projects, but there are some portions principal forgiveness available for both design and construction. Okay, so construction projects, when we're talking about lead service lines, what we've seen today is really two types. How folks have kind of developed their own system for addressing lead service lines. So one is what we call a combination project. This is where a lead service line replacement is a component or a portion of a larger water line improvement project. And that's just fine. And we can provide some of this incentive financing, the special financing that we're getting from Bill for those combination projects, just for the lead service line portion, in addition to your regular drinking water improvements. One of the key things I want to note here is, it says the lead service line portion must be identified prior to advertising. And what we're talking about there is with these combination projects, we have to know what portion of your project is going to go for lead service line improvements. And that way we can direct those specific lead service line dollars to that portion of your project. The second is what we call kind of a standalone lead service line project. So it's a project that all it's doing is lead service line replacement, and again, for that private and public side replacement. And that can be for a defined area. So you've identified a location in your system, in your community. You know, let's just say Walnut to Cherry Street, and you've identified your lead service lines, and you want to come through for replacement of those. That's a defined area lead service line project. Another option that we've seen, not as much, but is a possibility, is setting up a program for replacements. And this is where more that you're setting up a program where you have a contract with maybe one or more contractors to assist you with a plan or a systematic process for replacement of lead service lines throughout your system. So it's more of a larger contract up front, and then it assists programmatic or systematic method for replacement of lead service lines throughout the system. Okay. So what does the financing look like for construction? The good news is all loans related with lead service line lead service line projects and lead service line portions of projects are eligible for 0% loan financing, and that's available today. For communities that are disadvantaged, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means, but for communities that are disadvantaged, you can get up to 53% of the lead service line costs as principal forgiveness, and then the remainder will be at 0% interest financing, and that's just for that lead service line portion of your project if it's a combined project. So 53% principal forgiveness. Principal forgiveness is a coined term, and it essentially acts like a grant. It is principal on a loan that does not require repayment. So that 53% of the total cost, so the principal borrowing portion, would not require repayment. Acts very much like a grant. So how do you know if you're disadvantaged? What are the criteria? For the WSRLA program, we administer that program on the state fiscal year cycle. So we just started our 2024 program year. And at the beginning of each program year, we issue what we call a program management plan. And that identifies how we're going to use funds for the year, what we're giving out as incentives, and it also has lists of projects that we intend to fund throughout the year, that nominated a project throughout the year for funding. And you can access a copy of this in your handout section or the attachment section of the webinar today. You'll see 2024 draft PMP is available for you to take a look at. And that has our criteria, but there's socioeconomic criteria for disadvantage. So we're looking at things like MHI and income, poverty level, and unemployment for disadvantaged communities. So what if you're not on the list for funding for 2024 already? Not in the program management plan. Well, that's okay. And you've got a lead service line project. The good news is that lead service line projects can be nominated at any time of the year. Planning, design, and standalone construction projects can be nominated at any time. Those combination construction projects, so if you're doing a water line replacement and you're doing a lead service line as a piece of that, those can be nominated in February of 24. But if it's a lead service line project, planning, design, or construction will take those nominations at any time. And the nomination form is also available in your attachments section. For the other things we talked about today, just to reiterate, technical assistance, what Nush overview, that's available today as well. And your contact there would be through the Division of Drinking and Groundwaters to access technical assistance. And then that direct assistance, the future contracts for services, direct services, that's coming towards the end of 23 and beginning of 24. So plenty of opportunity right now for assistance for planning, design, construction, technical assistance for inventorying and mapping. Hopefully these opportunities will provide you some assistance as you're moving forward with your plan. Okay, so how to participate and stay engaged? How do you keep track of all of the stuff as it becomes available. How do you hear from us when we have announcements? First of all, questions after this webinar. As you're working on your lead service line programs and your inventories into the future, and you have questions about funding, there's an infrastructure funding at epa.ohio.gov. That is an email address that is monitored by multiple divisions, and we'll take a look at that and get right back to you. Materials will be posted on our website. So Drinking Water has their website for public water system financial assistance, and that's where the technical and local assistance information is going to be posted. And then any of our loan financing information is going to be available on our WSRLA program webpage. So for drinking water updates for public water systems, you want to make sure that you have updated contact information to your inspectors, your local inspectors. So make sure they have the most up-to-date information for your system. And that way, when information goes out directly to public water systems, that's going to the right person. Certainly, you can follow us on social media. And we also have blast emails that come out through the WSRLA program and others for announcements. And you can subscribe for those updates in our agency's resource hub. And there's a link there in this presentation to access that resource hub where you can sign up for announcements. Lastly, Amy mentioned at the beginning, we're planning some outreach events. And we did this, maybe years ago now, I'd say, at the beginning of, when Bill was really coming out, and we wanted to get as much information out to folks as possible. We found those really beneficial, and we had some great feedback from those events. So we're going to do those again, really focused on lead service line funding. So look for announcements and some registration for events coming to your neck of the woods there in August and September. Okay. All right. So also here are our contacts for the presenters today. Certainly reach out, directly with any questions that you have following this presentation. And I'm going to kick it back over to John, and we'll start going through some questions and answers.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you everybody for your attention today. If you need time to think about questions you might have, feel free to email us. We're really excited about these events. They were great when we did these events across the state of Ohio. We'd love to see you in person and really answer your questions. But I know we do have a couple questions today, so feel free to chat them in as we're here, and we'll answer as many questions as we can. So Dan, if you're ready to kick us off, we will go through some questions.
Okay, thank you, John. And yeah, we have received a number of questions, so I'll start going down through these in the order that we received them. John, unfortunately, I'm going to pick on you, as I think several of these are lined up for you. One is funding generally has a completion date. If lead time for materials such as copper are running behind, will the time frame be extended?
It's a really good question. So if you never worked with us before through the State Revolving Fund programs, we issue loans based on your construction costs. So you're going to be ready to enter into a contract with the contractor. So that's when you're going to enter into the loan agreement, which can include the loan funds as well as principal forgiveness funds. We can extend that loan. You're going to have a completion date established with your contractor. We're happy to do change orders, but that loan will be open as long as you're continuing to work on the project. And we do feel that the lead times have more or less got to normal. They were really bad during the height of the pandemic, but things seem to have settled down a bit at this point.
All right, thank you, John. And I think this next one might be another good one for you. If the public side doesn't have any lead lines, meaning we're not replacing any, are we still responsible for the private side?
I think down the pike you will be. If you're coming through us, we might have a couple questions speaking to this topic. If you're coming through us, we really want you to replace the entire line, so both the public and private. There could be some hooks with the lead and copper rule revisions that Nush mentioned that will really probably require more of an effort from public water systems to address that private side, even if they've already taken care of the public side. But coming through us, if you've got public and private, we want to have those addressed. I think it's probably a good idea to start working on private side. And we do have those incentives that Katie mentioned, the 0% loan funds and principal forgiveness for both the public and private side.
Excellent. Thank you, John. And
Hey, Dan.
Katie, oh, yes, go ahead.
Dan, this is Amy Klei. I just wanted to add one thing on to John's answer on that, so I apologize for jumping in here. The inventory requirements that Nush mentioned, you are required, regardless of what is on the public side, to also inventory the service lines that are on the private side. That is all part of the inventory requirements, just to be clear. Thank you.
No worries at all. And just as a reminder for anyone listening in as an attendee, feel free to ask your questions, and we're going to try to get to as many of them as possible in the time that we have remaining. If we don't get back to you during this actual webinar, we will respond to you in the next day or so via email. So next question, Katie, I think this is a good one for you. Is it correct that we have 5 years to pay back loans?
Good question. For planning and design loans, that term is 5 years. For construction financing, our typical term is 20 years, but can be up to 30 years, depending on the useful life of assets being improved. So as a rule of thumb, it's 5 years for planning and design and 20 years for construction.
Excellent. Katie, I think we're just going to be on a roll here. I have another one for you. This question is, you'd stated 0% loans are available for all lead service line projects. So does this mean that all nominated projects will receive 0% loans?
Right, so all lead service line projects that were nominated are eligible for that 0% financing. That's because we received that additional funding through the bill just for lead service lines. And so that's how we're making that available, that combination, principal forgiveness and then 0% loans. So if it's a lead service line project and it was nominated, it should be listed in the PMP on the lead service line project list. If it wasn't nominated and you want to submit a nomination during the year, that's fine, and we'll get you added. But all of those projects are eligible for 0%. For the lead portions.
That's excellent news. All right, next question. To qualify for principal forgiveness as a disadvantaged community, does a utility have to replace the lead service line on the private side? And John, this might be a good one for you.
Yeah, good question, similar to a previous question. These are kind of two different topics. So to qualify for principal forgiveness, we're looking at socioeconomic factors. So we're looking at median household income, we're looking at unemployment rate, we're looking at poverty level, and we're looking at your sewer and water rates kind of compared to state benchmarks. So if you meet those criteria, you're going to qualify for principal forgiveness. But across the board, we really want you to replace both the public and private side. So they're not tied at the hip as far as qualifying for principal forgiveness, but as part of receiving this assistance, we want you to replace the entire lead service line.
All right, thank you, John. Katie, I think I have another one for you if you're ready.
Sure.
For clarification, if loan forgiveness is deemed, is it based upon 53% of the total request?
Yeah, good question. So the percentage of principal forgiveness and the 0% loan financing is going to be applied to the as-bid costs. So if we're talking about a construction project, once you come through for financing, we award funds and award loans based on as-bid costs. So once those final numbers are in, then we'll apply that 53% to the total lead service line cost. So it's not just based on the estimate up front. We're trying to give you the most that we can for your actual dollars.
All right, thank you, Katie. John, I think I have another one for you. This one is, are projects that are under construction now eligible for funding?
Generally, no. Unfortunately, we have federal money, we have state requirements, so we'll be working with you on the front end before your project gets underway. We'll be doing an environmental review, work with you on financial reviews. So if a project's underway, unfortunately, we won't be able to work with you, but we're happy to chat about future projects if you'd like to reach out to any of us on the call today.
All right, thank you, John. Another really good question that came in. How long does it take to receive the actual loan award date? And Katie, that might be a good one for you.
Sure. So it really depends on how ready the project is to move forward. So what we generally say is from like the start of your bidding process and your review of your project, upfront review of your project to the time that you get a loan award, it's anywhere from 3 to 4 months at minimum with that bidding process included. So that's kind of what we use, but depending on where you are in your process, so if you're not quite ready for bidding, it might take a little bit longer. So if you're a project already on the list and you're in our system, our team is going to be working with you on developing the time frame that suits your project best and when we can anticipate, a loan award going out. If you haven't nominated a project yet, when you put that nomination in, I would anticipate at least 3 months from the time of that nomination to the anticipated loan award date. So on the nomination form, there's a place for you to say, when would you like to have loan award and your funding available? So that would be, we recommend at least 3 months out into advance.
All right. Thank you, Katie. And I'm actually going to stay with you. I have another question that I think might be a good one for you. If a community meets the factors to be a disadvantaged community, is that all that's required, or are there additional criteria? In other words, are there, X number of lead service lines need to be in place, et cetera?
Yeah, great question. So if the community meets the disadvantaged criteria, there aren't any other factors other than obviously it being a lead service line project. We don't have like a set number of lead service lines that need to be replaced. In some of our smaller systems, they may have very few total lead service lines in the system, and that's just fine. We'll replace any of those that need done, but there's no like minimum or a set number of lead service lines to be eligible. It's just lead service line replacement costs.
All right, thank you, Katie. Nush, you thought you were maybe off the hook, but you are not. I actually have a question I think that's perfect for you. This question is, Nush, if you're ready, will these funds cover the replacement of galvanized water lines on the private side that are connected to public lead service lines?
I believe the answer is yes. I believe our funding covers that as well. I might need to refer to if Katie or John knows for sure. I apologize.
Yeah, that's correct, Nush. If the galvanized is downstream of a lead service line, if the galvanized is downstream of the public lead service line, or there was once a public lead service line upstream of the galvanized, we can replace that. So if the galvanized is connected to a public lead service line, or at one time was connected, we can replace that with our funding.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Thank you, Nush. And again, just as a reminder, I'm seeing lots of questions that are coming in. We will get back to all of you with each of your questions answered in the next day or so. In the meantime, please feel free to continue to type in your questions, as we still have another 10 minutes or so before we need to close out for today. All right. Next question, John, I think this might be a good one for you. If my project is listed in the Drinking Water Assistance Fund Program Year 24 Program Management Plan, am I guaranteed lead service line funding?
Yeah, good question. Based on the volume of funds we have available, we have funds available for you. So, principal forgiveness isn't guaranteed, but there's a good chance that if you're going forward in this program year, you're listed for principal forgiveness, you're going to receive that award. So If there's anything we can do to help you move your project along, or if you have questions, reach out to us on this call. We'll connect you with your project team and make sure you're able to take advantage of the opportunity. We don't want you to miss out, but as I mentioned before, these opportunities are going to be around for several more years to come, probably until 2027 or 2028.
Sounds good. Thank you, John. Katie, I think I have one for you. Can you participate in the program if you're just doing lead service line replacements, or does it have to be tied to a bigger capital project like a water main replacement project?
Yep, good questions. So it can be really either. It can be a standalone lead service line project that comes through for financing, or it can be a component. The lead service line piece can be a component of a larger one. The example we use and often see coming through the program is water line replacement. So if you're doing primary water line replacement and you're doing service lines as part of that, lead service line replacement could be part of that project. So it can be a component or it can be a standalone, either way.
Thank you, Katie. All right, Nush, you thought you were only going to have one question, but I think I have another one for you.
I'm here.
Nush, first off, in all seriousness, does pineapple belong on pizza?
Oh, that is a controversial topic in our
It
house.
sure is. It sure is. It is in mine too. That's why I'm gathering data.
For myself, I don't like it, but I'll eat it. So I guess I'm in the middle.
Well, you're in the majority with the answers too, so that's great.
Okay.
So Nush, back to the questions. If a project includes quote unquote unknown services, are those eligible for funding?
Yes. So you would then be identifying it while you're conducting the project, and then replacing it with funding. One thing to consider is that unknown service lines, based on how the rule is written, are also considered lead service lines. So identifying is another benefit to making sure that you accurately know where your lead service lines are, because if a service line is considered lead, then there's another list of requirements that go along with that, and compliance and monitoring. So that's another benefit to identifying your service lines as early as possible.
All right, thanks, Nush. I think I have another one for John here while we still have a few minutes. Does the principal forgiveness only apply to the lead service line portion of our project or to all project costs? John, maybe this is a good one for you.
Yeah, it's a good question. As I kind of mentioned earlier, we're really looking at the lead service line. Unfortunately, this funding from Congress is pretty narrow, and it really is for the lead service line. So that's going to be either 0% funding for work associated with the lead service line replacement. That could be excavation, replacement, and restoration, but it wouldn't be for like the associated water main cost. If you're replacing a water main as part of that project, that would be at whatever your qualifying interest rate is through the state revolving fund program.
Excellent, thanks, John. Katie, I think I have another one for you. What is my interest rate for lead service line replacement that's tied to a larger infrastructure project?
That's a really good question. So if you have a combined project, and so a portion is lead service line and a portion is traditional, drinking water infrastructure improvement, it's a blended interest rate. So the lead service line portion, those costs are, the 0% and, the principal forgiveness, that combination. And then the remainder, the regular infrastructure improvements, are for whatever your community qualifies for. So small community rate, or if you're disadvantaged, that kind of thing. And so at the end of the day, those costs, that'll be combined into one blended rate at the time of repayment. So once the project's finished and all those dollars are settled, it'll be a blended rate at the end of the day.
All right, thank you, Katie. John, back to you. I think I have another one. Can you fund the loan portion with other funding or just take the principal forgiveness portion?
Well, we've asked that question of our counterparts at US EPA, and unfortunately, no. We're really required to give out exactly 49% of our capitalization grant as principal forgiveness, and the rest as loan or using our set-asides with technical service providers. So that's kind of what we have on offer is for replacement, these principal forgiveness combination with low interest loans, 0% in this case.
Excellent. Thanks for qualifying that. Nush, you got the correct answer about the pizza, and I think the reward is another question for you, maybe another two. This one is, if you replace a lead service line and find galvanized on the customer side, does it have to be replaced as well?
Yes. So if it's downstream, like John had mentioned, if it is downstream or was downstream of a lead service line, then it would need to be replaced. It would be considered lead. So it would need to be replaced. Now, as far as funding goes, it would qualify for funding as well. Did I answer that question? I'm trying to remember exactly what
You did,
how it was worded. Okay.
and the pizza was a good answer. Any qualifying thoughts from anybody? Hearing none. Okay, I think we have maybe one more question. Again, if you guys have more questions, please feel free to chat those in. And if we have time, we will cover those for sure. Nush, I have one more question for you. Who do I contact about technical assistance?
Okay, great question. So if you are considering, if you are a public water system under 10,000, and maybe you don't know where to start, you're a little overwhelmed potentially, I think a great solution would be to work with RCAP. If that is your choice, then please go ahead and contact me using the contact information that's in the slides. If you are looking to use our state contract that we're working on, please make sure that your contact information is updated. If you're a public water system, you can contact your inspector and make sure that your email address for your administrative contact is updated, your owner contact information is updated. Those are things that are really important. We're communicating via email on a lot of these things. If you are a consultant or somebody else who's interested in that information, please be sure that you're on our listservs. There is one through DEFA and one through drinking water that we would use for communicating this kind of information. So feel free to get a hold of us if you need more information on that. But that is how we will present that information. It'll also be on our website. I'll go ahead and put that website for our financial assistance in the chat. But if you have any questions on that, please go ahead and reach out to us. But the state contract, the one that I mentioned, that we will have, hopefully a few contracts with different vendors to do that work. That one will be coming later this year. So the final state that our public water systems will be interested in will probably be at the end of this year, early next year. So be on the lookout around that time frame of when we're reaching out to our public water systems and asking you to submit your project information so that we can consider you for that contract. But if there's any questions on any of that, or if you still don't, quite understand where to go, please feel free to reach out. Just email us and we'll get the information to you.
All right, thank you, Nush, and thank you, John, Katie, Nush, and Amy for your great presentations, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. Once you leave, a survey will pop up. We value your feedback and would greatly appreciate it if you'd let us know how we're doing and let us know if there's anything we can do to further assist you. A certificate of attendance will also be emailed to you to download. Before we end for the day, please check out our upcoming sessions. On the afternoon of August 8th, we'll be hosting a scrap tire regulations webinar, and this webinar will provide an overview of Ohio scrap tire regulations and infrastructure, registration requirements for transporters, scrap tire recovery facilities, and beneficial use rules. On the morning of August 22nd, we'll be hosting a webinar covering tips and tools for using the EDMR and stream services in the e-business center. In addition to covering the basics for these services, we'll also cover who can report and submit applications, ways to simplify data entry, and where and when to report noncompliance. We'll also briefly cover permitting structure and where to find additional resources and guides on Ohio EPA's website. And lastly, save the date. September 19th through the 21st will be our virtual sustainability conference. And as it sounds, that will be free for you to attend, no matter where you are with an internet connection. So check out our registration announcements coming soon. To register for upcoming webinars, check out our new agency event calendar at the link listed on the slide. The events calendar is on our main webpage, and the link is also on our webpage footer at the bottom of each individual page. To receive notifications of upcoming webinars, go to Ohio EPA's Resource Hub, create an account, and select the option Subscribe to Updates. The Resource Hub is also at the bottom footer of each of our webpage. If you missed any past webinars, you can also go to DEFA's webpage at the link on the slide. Here you'll find recordings of trainings you may have missed, and you can also go to our agency YouTube channel to view recorded webinars. And with that, we will end today's webinar. Thank you all again for joining us, and have a wonderful day.